Do you have that relative on Facebook spewing false facts? Just sharing everything they think, everything they find, no matter whether it's true or not. In the information age, all we get is disinformation. Are there other motives for people to spread things that aren't true? You almost need to have a gumshoe or a sleuth or a PI to figure out what is true and what is false. Come, join us. So I'm Dan.
And I'm Nick, folks.
We're old friends dissecting one topic at a time. People, technology, media, we've got it all covered.
Each discussion here is a deep dive into our unique perspective. The taboo, forbidden subjects, they're all on the chopping block, baby. We don't pander to popular opinion. We might even get a little bit dirty.
Warning, this podcast may contain mature language and sexual content and is for infotainment purposes only.
So join us. Have a good time.
Open up your ear holes, because we're going to fondle your follicles.
Huh? Strawberry jalapeno.
Okay, I'm Dan.
I'm Quarantine Nick, folks.
Yeah, and we are the Unpanderers.
Together we are. So tonight we're going to talk about that age-old super topic of choice, bad information.
Yeah. Which kind of touches on fake news, which I think we covered before.
We have.
So,
Kind of a big thing.
do you have your mask? I want to take this mask off because it's getting kind of hot. And it's
Yeah,
all
go
annoying.
ahead. I got mine. Mine covers just my throat area.
It
a
makes it
tiny
so
one.
you don't touch above your throat.
Correct. Ooh, don't want to mess up my hair. Ooh,
Yeah.
don't want to mess up my hair. Ooh, let's leave it alone.
So do you think the mask doesn't?
Yeah, that's blue.
There's so many people freaking out and coronavirus and news outlets not sharing, I guess, the proper information. It's gotten better. And we're at fault here because we did a coronavirus episode not knowing anything because nothing was known at that time.
Yeah, we did it before everything got here. It was more like a pre-coronavirus episode.
Yeah. So we're spreaders of misinformation, right?
A little bit.
So we need
What,
to
would
do
you like
more.
to do our corrections? Ooh.
Yeah, part of our corrections. We used to do corrections every episode because we'd be so wrong.
But now we're hardly ever wrong. Just once in a
It's
while.
almost like we should have done more investigation to start.
Oh, sleuthing. Look at this guy. He's ready to
go back in time. When
Sweet mustache, by
we
the
could
way.
actually hunt down the perp. Bust
The
him.
perp. I love your mustache. I
Yeah, you
really
do.
do.
I like
When'd
how
you do it? When'd you do it? Today?
I did that like 3 days ago.
Oh, and just keeping it up?
Yeah, it's really annoying. I can't stand it, but I'll just let it go.
Is there a dynamic for that? Because I had one for 2 days, and then I was like, I'm done with this. But I could have seen myself keeping it for years. Who knows?
It's an expression of freedom because really I felt so caged in that the shower was the only time of freedom, and I had my razor and I was like, it's
I
time
could
to
do
express
anything.
myself.
I could do anything with this. Ching!
Yeah.
And you decided to create that mustache, so that's interesting.
Creation.
It's a very dad look. I like it.
I know, I aged so much. And then my hair started looking weird and I was like, oh my god, I've turned.
See, I went the opposite way. I dyed my hair blue and made myself a mohawk, so I'm like an 8-year-old or a 14-year-old who's in quarantine right now. A lot of them are probably doing this.
Hey guys.
Yo, I'm gonna dye my hair a crazy color. Let's do it.
So let's talk about what lies do we spread about coronavirus? Certain things,
What misinformations?
yeah,
The spreadability. I still don't even know the infection rate.
that's true. We don't know. We don't know how many people it infects. So that's medical studies, scientific fact.
Testing.
It takes time, and there's no proven evidence that how quickly does it spread? Who does it spread to? Who's the target? How old do you have to be? There's percentages on who dies when they've been confirmed of having it, but that doesn't tell you who else had it that didn't get confirmed.
Here's the problem: we don't test in this country. We're literally probably the worst testing country. Is that true?
So
Not
there's a
the
caveat
worst.
there, is that we've
Okay,
tested the
go ahead.
most people now. At the time,
Physically.
At the time when misinformation was spouting from his mouth, we were not testing jack shit. And there's also, like, we waited a month because we didn't trust the tests from other countries, and we had some sort of snafu. But that information doesn't, it doesn't fit the narrative which someone was trying to, I guess, downplay or upplay himself at the same time as not sharing the proper information. So this gets down into the crux. We didn't have information, but we're doing it in good faith. We're talking about coronavirus, and we talk about what we thought, and we did a little caveat in the beginning saying we don't know everything. We're for infotainment purposes only, and we reiterated that.
Infotainment.
The biggest thing that I think I've been bothered by in the past 2 months is having a president that is not a straight shooter, that doesn't just relay what he knows and doesn't provide any guidance.
Everything he said is agenda-based.
Yeah. He has his own motives for doing things, and it's not in the best interest of the people. And this is kind of like what you're seeing now with protests. There's all those protests cropping up.
So here's my question for you. We've touched on this on fake news. We've touched on this on echo chamber. I think we talk about a lot because where we get our news, like you can watch a certain news station that's going to give you what you think you want to hear. Oh, yeah. You can watch another news station that's going to give you almost the opposite, but they're both news. How's that possible? They're both giving you the facts of the day, the facts of the world, the facts of everything, the facts of politics, the facts of life, the facts of this virus, but they're opposites. It seems dangerous. That seems weird. That seems like that shouldn't be a thing that you can get. Everyone's fine and this is overblown, but you also shouldn't be able to get everything's going to hell and we're all screwed and we're on a flaming boat to hell. Like, if both of these are news, that to me, that is crazy. That's wild. That seems to be the problem right away. And how do I know I'm listening to the right one? How do I know what makes the right one correct? Is it science? Is it the amount of people that follow it? Is it predictability? Is it facts? I really don't know, and that's where I think we can go with this.
Yeah, it's people knock sensationalized news, but also desensitized news is bad too. When you have something like what's happening now, which is deadly and applies to all of us, you just want facts, and no one is providing any sort of facts other than when you have to go to a website and search through a bunch of articles to figure out, does this really apply to me and am I safe?
Even the articles, when I'm reading them, I'm like, okay, who wrote the article? What's the angle here? Like what? Because you can write facts to fit any narrative. It's like backwards story writing. Correct. You can put a spin on anything. I can make some terrible facts look like good things. I can make some good facts look like terrible things. It all depends on how I want to spin it as an author, as an article creator, a journalist, or whatever you want to call them. A journo. Calling them.
Journos. Yes.
Journo. I love that term.
Reiteration.
Yeah. But like, everyone wants to hear what they want to hear. So this is insane to me. It's 4:20, right?
4:20 the day, yes.
I smell weed everywhere.
Huh.
That's not a joke.
Is that your body releasing stored up weed from your fat cells because it knows when to celebrate?
I haven't had material in a long time. I'm dead serious. Like someone's outside of my house just smoking weed or something. That's insane. I haven't smelled this smell in months. Who's outside my house smoking marijuana? Anyway, I'm really sorry about that. That's
definitely
what I smell. But anyway,
it's not a gimmick.
100%. No, this is not a gimmick or a thing because our dates are always pushed out. I'm 100% smelling weed, and I'm in my basement, so it must be someone in the area smoking a ton. Anyway, I apologize for breaking the fourth wall here, but something is breaking through my wall, and it is marijuana.
In a literal
smoke.
wall.
Yes. Anyway, you're going to hear what you want to hear, and then you're only going to listen to what you want to hear. do you think it's even possible to argue with someone who has the opposite facts in front of them? Could you?
You're saying if they're presented with the opposite facts and they believe them, and they have the articles and the sources and the credibility to back them up.
Well, define credibility. They have the articles.
The what seems to be credible. What looks like it's credible. What sounds credible.
It's from an actual news source. Boom.
That's like there's like a Gilead study on remdesivir, whatever it's called. That one last week, it came out that it seemed to like get people released from the hospital in 3 days, but the things that you
the drug?
Yeah, I don't know how to say it.
I forget, but go ahead.
Or remdesivir or whatever.
No, I mean, go ahead. What?
Yeah.
About the drug?
Well, they were saying like they spun it so that it was like they were referring to like number of patients and then percentage of patients and then like how quickly they were released. And what you need to know is like if you're a scientist or if you're in the medical community, is like there's a baseline for what you're doing and there's a way you present it, and you can tell when facts are missing. And the facts that were missing were like key things, but it makes it seem like it was a very powerful drug. But it doesn't tell you like who they picked or how they picked them or what stages they were at, or like it said that like they were in the ICU, but it didn't say like why were they in the ICU. So
right.
It could be very good, but it's also spinning a story so that the stock price goes up, which it did 16%. And if you were to look at some of the stories I looked at, somebody bought like millions worth of Gilead calls, and calls are like almost like stock, but you can make a lot more money on option calls. And somebody made like $10 to $20 million off of that story dropping by accident. So,
what a coincidence, right?
Yeah. So this sort of thing, it's frightening because not only are like average people buying into it, but the people who are like in control and in part of the business like world are also doing this, and then politicians are doing it, and the president is doing it.
But why wouldn't any of these people do it if money was involved? And that's all that matters, kind of, a little bit.
Exactly. So the frightening part is
money and keeping yourself safe. Yourself, not necessarily more people. In fact, you might be able to keep yourself more safe if you have more people go away from you towards danger or something like that, right?
Yeah. If you could protect half your wealth, not lose half your wealth, or double your wealth, and it was relatively innocuous, you weren't going to directly hurt somebody, would you do it? If it was just you writing a story about something that looks like it could be possible.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
The way you just described it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really very strange.
It's
and here's the other thing. So before, someone could write this story, write about this drug, write about any of this stuff 20 years ago. So you'd have to be a member of journalistic integrity board somewhere. You'd have to get approved. You'd have to get your editor would ream you out and tell you to research it 10 times. It's not getting published for 3 weeks. At that point, 3 weeks is a friggin' long time in the world of stock and everything else. Does it get released? And then what papers hold it? Is this the New York Times? Great. I mean, it's still not everybody. The age of the internet now, if something is hot for a day or two, it can travel the world with millions and millions and millions of retweets. Like I'm talking the world can see one piece of news or one article in 2 days. Before, that would take for the world to see an article 20 years ago. The chances of that wouldn't even happen. No, it wouldn't even happen. And then all the checks and balances that lead up to it, it would probably get vetted and wrecked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of popularity. Yes, neutered. A lot of popularity plays into this, and speed. Popularity and speed are the number one and number two pieces of information that we use on the internet, right? Mm-hmm. I read something if it's got 70 million retweets, like I'm like, yo, let me check this out. It's probably pretty good. I give it a validity. I mean, versus something that has 8 retweets. Are you like, okay, that's just some guy in his basement? But I mean, really, the only thing separating it is the mouthpiece. And the mouthpiece could be a website that gets millions of viewers anyway, and people retweet their stuff regardless. So what's my information coming from?
So this happened exactly to me, where I'm researched enough to have a legitimate opinion and say, like, your like facts are unfounded. And there was one person, I'll call him an internet troll on a Reddit.
Is this a Reddit post? Yeah, go for it.
Him
go
commenting
off, King.
about.
Go off, King.
Yeah, it was him commenting about naturally. I think his username was like fake news ignorer. Oh, I threw that out. Anyway, he was saying something about like reopening the economy because the value of life isn't infinite. Like if you lose one person, then it's like, you know.
He's right.
It's not infinite
to that degree, right?
It's not hyperbole,
infinite.
which
one
is
person.
A dickhole way to phrase an answer, right? And he was going off saying that coronavirus is just a flu, which is a common thing, and that the lethality was much lower than they are projecting. Of course, if you look online, it's probably like 10% lethality, like really high.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Now that's also
not
skewed by test. Yes. Correct. Yeah. Yes, I get you.
Yeah, because some people asymptomatic, they don't necessarily go to the hospital. It might be that, 5 or 10 times people, like the amount of cases that are actually like tested, like it's probably 10 times that. So say you take 10% death rate and you divide it by 10 and you say 1%. 1% is still a lot of people. 1% is 3 million people in the U.S. If everyone gets infected, which doesn't.
Sure, also probably wouldn't happen, but let's sure.
So the projections from the White House were like 100,000, 200,000 people die, which if you like do break it down and like do some sort of advanced math and figure out how many people are going to get infected, it's still like 0.5%. Like that's somewhere in the middle. This guy was arguing that because of 3 studies that were extrapolated and the data was just like you take this small subset of like a couple hundred people and extrapolate it
200 people here.
Yeah. And then like do it by like.
And it's also basing it on what a different locality, which is different than a nursing home, which is different than a small city, which is different than a suburb, which is different than a city, like Detroit, which is different than a metropolitan area.
Yeah, exactly. This was a small German town, and then it was a town in California. So I don't know what the German town. I don't have a reference. The California town, I think it was
population.
Santa Clara, I think, which is probably an affluent, wealthy area that probably reduces the number of deaths, I would assume. And the other one was the Diamond Princess, which was,
the Diamond Princess.
It has a lot of percentage.
I know.
And
is it?
I think it was high, but then it was age adjusted because the people that go on cruises are actually usually very old. And I'm going to ignore them.
Also more prone.
Yeah. The Reaper is coming for them. They also like, they if you break down like the Diamond Princess by age range, and like you get into the younger ages, there was only like 30 of each category from like 20, 30, and 40 years old. So like if no one dies, that's a 0%, right? 0% death rate for that age bracket.
Sure. Yeah.
If one person dies, that's 3%. So
right.
What do you do?
So each individual is a 3 to 10. You're messing with 3 to 10% based on 2 people dying that skewed your entire percentage versus 0%.
He's like a raptor. He's figured out how to open doors now.
Oh, is this a child? Oh no.
It's okay. He's immune to the disease since Diamond Princess told us. Oh my goodness.
So
you cover it. You cover it for the
all right, I'll cover it. I can cover it. Go ahead. So what Dan doesn't want to get into, what I will get into, and this is my skew for a few minutes. Fake news is a very real thing. You all have uncles and cousins and people who post stuff to Facebook all the time. And it's like, stand with me or repost this if you're not afraid of the news's version of the coronavirus or the news's version of this. And it's like it's super loud and in your face. And these people want to be heard. I'm still talking, but I'll fill you in. And I'm talking about these posts on Facebook. These people that post the things that are like, I'm not afraid of the coronavirus. And the news just wants things shut down. Holly Weird is at it again. And these people, they're not stupid. They're not always the brightest, but they're very convincing. They want to be heard. They want to be heard. They want their voice to be heard. They want everyone to know that they're not going to lay down and take nothing. They're strong. They're going to rise up. And there's this hope element to it. There's this strength element to it. There's this screw the bad news. I'm going to beat the bad news. And I respect that in one tiny respect, but I don't think it doesn't apply to science. It doesn't apply to the facts. It doesn't apply to all of it. So when I look at the news, I look at a myriad of things. Yes, I used myriad in a sentence.
Nice.
I went to college for two things.
There's a milieu of words coming out here.
Yes, there is. So I went to college for two things. Writing articles for the newspaper.
And women?
And biology. Science. So two things I'm very good at reading is what a science article or what a scientific paper is leaving in or leaving out, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to see if you've studied this stuff. You're like, wow, they only mentioned this. They didn't mention B, or the survivor rate after X, or what happens when study X is not determined in a control group. And then also from a journalistic point of view, I see the way they're writing. They're writing an article for a skew. You're skewing it to one side. Mm-hmm. So when you see these two things, I'm a learned individual. Right away, my hairs are up. I go like this. Okay, this one's BS. This one's mostly true. This one I kind of like it. I don't know. This one is total garbage in a trash can. This one's on fire garbage. And I see that, and I don't know that everyone else who reads this article, my aunt, my cousin, who, you know what I mean, and works in the lumber yard, like I don't know that they all see that. And there's no way that they could. Mm-hmm. So what do? Do I say, hold on, pal, you're wrong.
My references.
Yeah, you can't do that either because it's just
so
you can't tell someone their whole identity or their whole way of thinking is wrong.
You can't dissuade them from what they believe is true.
No, because I just mentioned it ties to their feelings of indifference or strength or against the
subjective,
the grain.
Yes.
Sure, yeah, it's very subjective, but that's how people live.
Yeah, those people, there's a surprising amount of them that can't think objectively, and they also can't admit that they're wrong. So they lack the humility to say, you know, what you said.
But again,
I analyze what you said.
Wouldn't they have to like dissuade or like dissociate with 90% of their profile pictures, their posts, everything? They'd have to change their life if they were like, yeah, you're right about that article. It's total crap. Or it's 100% correct. I should change everything I write. How could you do that? I don't know that you could.
So I joined Facebook in college, and I touched it a little bit, but I really haven't in probably like 5 years.
Yeah, I'm like 5 to 8 years probably.
Yeah, somewhere in that
in between
range.
there, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm.
Like 3 weeks back, I got back on there to see one of my aunts just like posting like Trump fantastic, he's great, he's amazing, he's great, and then
saving the day.
All those little like the snippets of like him saying like one thing because he double speaks, like they took the positive part and then they're trying to promote it. And I think there's nothing that he's doing to help you individually, so your identity is bound to what you voted in the past. But
yes.
Everything
it's
you're
like saying I'm right.
Yeah, everything you're saying is refutable, and here are the sources, and you don't acknowledge the sources. You just have all these tactics that you've learned from him and through life to you can redirect and like not actually answer the question or argue on the same topic. At the end of it, like somebody is hurting the other person, or they feel like they should have like why are you attacking me? Like the
feelings are tied to it. They're individual.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What would you do if you were told by a very reputable source that all of the information you think is right is wrong? Let's say they were like your scientific studies. They're funded by Hollyweird, and Hollyweird just wants everyone to get transgender surgery or whatever. I don't know. One of those crazy conspiracies. Mm-hmm. But I mean, let's take in mind that if anyone had enough money to influence an entire scientific propaganda, it would totally be Hollywood, right?
I mean, yeah, if there's a bunch of celebrities
if anyone
maybe
did
some sort of scientifical situation, maybe they have like a religion or a cult, some people call it.
Cult. If they poured all of their money to scientists studying X, Y, and Z, And then they poured all their money towards all the reporting sites, the journalists, the New York Times, the whatever. And they had those two just go in collaboration and report what they want to report. They would probably report what they want to report, and that's all the information you would get, because it would have the highest refresh rate, retweets, biggest population. It would come from scientific journals, right? I mean, you don't check the scientific journals curriculars every day. You don't go to their website and see what the scientists themselves have been doing and who they get paid by, and I don't see their bank accounts, right? Theoretically. I'm just saying theoretically.
But they should. They should reveal, like a super PAC.
How crazy would that be?
Yeah.
If they have to show their bank account every day, the scientists?
See, and it should be like, instead of bank account numbers, it should be like what organizations they belong to.
Well, then there'd be offshore accounts. There'd be some wild stuff.
That happens now.
It does. So let's say all of this is happening to dissuade you, a person who believes in science, who's a very learned individual, who has access to all of the internet. Like, you're not an idiot. You can look anywhere you want. You have certain sources, scientific sources you love. Like, what if they're feeding you false information? It's $1 billion industry to dissuade, to trick you. What would you say? Like, would you be like, no, that's not happening?
It's it's the effect that I have on other people, that there are very few things that I'm adamant enough that I will read something and then like try to impart it on other people. Like, I don't generally. I'm pretty laissez-faire.
Quiet.
So yeah,
to yourself.
I'm toned down. There's no way that I'm.
You have gotten your heckles up on this whole ever since the virus happened. Yes, you have.
It's because it directly interferes with my own, like, not stability, but my own, like, logic. Like, the scheme of logic that needs to happen did not happen and still hasn't happened. And how people miss that this should have happened and they just keep going on. I just like, how did you miss that he said this and like you guys need to know this, but you still think that, and for some reason you don't care that you're the ones that are gonna die from this thing, and you're like, whoa, this is like, it's nothing. And I'd wonder if you're in World War I or World War II or Spanish flu, I wonder if those people, like, if you were a certain percentage of those people that were like, this thing's nothing, like, at the end of all that, do you think those people were like, oh, that wasn't a big deal, and like you lost, like, 20% of the world?
I actually think so.
You think those people are still like, yeah, see, that wasn't so bad?
Yeah. The government exaggerated World War One. I think they say that. Because think of it. You can drop that number on them, that 5 million, 50 million people died or whatever, and we sent so many people overseas.
How can you tell? Really?
They can't.
These reports that come from everywhere, and everyone's got their own opinions.
They can't see that number. I mean, where can you see 50 million people died? Like, they can't. An individual over here who was not overseas at war and thought it wasn't a big deal, there's no way in the world. Don't even give me a website, because there weren't websites back then. I'm just saying, if you're blind to something, you will remain blind to it.
That's the one thing that amazes me, is that, like, what number of deaths in the United States is acceptable for one category of thing. And I would have thought that number would be like 1,000 people a day dying from something. Like, that's really serious. You would think. What
did we just do? We just passed the number one, right?
Yeah, we
yesterday we were number one.
We're up to 35,000, and I think in the U.S.
40. I thought it was 40.
Maybe it might be 40,000 now.
I think I saw 40 somewhere. Yeah.
2,000 people were dying a day last week. That number's kind of plateauing.
Yeah.
Good, but everything's shut down. But still,
right.
2,000 people dying a day. People believe that this is like a short-term thing because they can't rationalize 500,000 people dying from it. Which I don't think 500,000 people are going to die from it, but
no, I don't think we'll get there. But
how like, if it lasts for a month, that's a lot. We're up to 100,000 people if it lasts another month. It's like, how many people are legitimizing going back to work, restarting the economy, and don't care about 100,000 people dying? Which is exactly the argument that person on Reddit was trying to propose. He's saying, like, I was arguing that, like, you don't know the death rate. You can't state that it's
know.
less than the flu. You can't argue that it's not as bad as the flu. And
so the unknown hypothesis. Yes. If you don't actually physically know the number of people that will die, you kind of have to edge on the side of more people will die.
Caution.
Because if you don't, and then you go ahead and it's like oopsie, well, you can't oopsie and kill that many people. That's literally extremely, it's irresponsible.
Yes.
I mean, you could look at it in 20 years and say it wasn't as bad. The infection rate wasn't as terrible and the death rate wasn't as terrible. They probably could have relaxed it 2 weeks earlier and gotten the economy running. But like, that's 20 years later. You say 2 weeks and like, oopsie, as opposed to the other way where thousands, if not millions of more people could die because you oopsie the other way.
Yeah. What would you say to someone that was like fearful and scared in their home and saying like, I don't know what to do? What would you tell them?
Personally?
Yeah.
Trying to hang it out. I don't know. Work out more in your home.
Yeah. What about you're a terrible reporter?
Well, also a terrible scientist. So, yeah. I mean, it came to full fruition.
I'm going to rip on Trump so badly here because this is the first time a president I told my aunt that she was a disgrace on Facebook.
Was it? It was a woman too. He said that too, right? He only says these things to women. Okay, that's fine.
No, he said that to a man. He told the man he was a terrible reporter.
I apologize. He usually does. He's usually very mean to the women, which I found
He is. There was one reporter that asked him. He had like they called it a propaganda video, but it was like his own defense where he was pulling out the facts about what he did, and then he played it during a press.
2 days ago, he played it before his press conference. There was like all this good stuff about him, which I think is
hype himself up.
He is the ultimate self-hype
narcissist.
Man, and
oh my god,
he will. I dislike him. We don't get political here. We already kind of are political. It's clear, but he will forever be my OG greatest. Like
ridiculous
joke. Yeah. Just I can't believe it's real, and it makes me smile on one hand, and will probably result in the death of millions. But how is it real anyway?
Yeah,
go on.
I was just he played that video, and the idiot that he is, he paid what I've heard is his caddy made the video for him. Because he's nepotistic and he hires only the people he knows, even in capacities that they're not capable of doing.
You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. Yeah, I get you.
And apparently he left out, he said like, oh, in January I shut down travel, and then March we started doing all these things.
And February.
The female reporter goes, well, what about February? And that reporter...
Did you hear me?
Yeah.
I said March.
January. I closed down travel, and she kept saying, "What about February?
You're
your own video,
February, Mr. President." Yeah,
you didn't do anything in February.
Are you not hearing? The Chinese in January we were saying it's going to be a big thing. In March, I was shutting down more airports. Mr. President, what about February? He was so appalled that
and at the end of it, he's like, "You're fake news station."
Fake news.
I'm not trying to rip on the president, but I've never been so ashamed of a president, because the president should be very strong and very direct and not waver and then not manipulate things to his advantage in the middle of a global pandemic which is killing 1,000, 2,000 people a day. And what's baffling to me is that his supporters will still say he's fantastic, he's doing a great job. And I'm like, what like, he's not doing anything. He literally said, okay, the states can take control of everything, the states are up to it. Like, and then a week later he goes, I have total authority. It's my decision. Total authority,
I remember that. Yeah.
And the next day he goes, the states can do whatever they want. He purposely makes these sound clips so that he can replay them later in his own mind.
He could play either one.
And
He could play either one. Yeah. He's correct, sort of.
And then his followers will eat it up because they're not read.
So what do you think ultimately is wrong with the followers?
So this is there was a quote on the ignorance of man is like the number one thing that we have to battle is that, our school systems and the way we educate people and the way they analyze things and the way we argue and discuss and like build knowledge and logic and common sense. It's like it's all being screwed right now because all of these people, it's the people who voted for Trump, and I'm going to say it, they voted for Trump because he's an ignorant asshole, and so are they. And most of them, the hardcore ones, like you can't help those people, and they love shitting on other people, regardless of who it is, regardless of how much logic it has, regardless of the logic, or the science, or the what it's going to do to the future. Like they don't give a shit. And the first time ever, I don't vote. Like I've never voted, but this time I'm like anybody but Trump. And I mean anybody but Trump. Like if it was Trump versus Trump, like a Trump that had never been in office versus a Trump that had been there for 4 years, like fuck, I'm voting for Trump 4 years ago. Like if they're both in the same election, because he doesn't know how to manipulate things. He's going to fuck up things a lot, but he's not going to fuck up things as much as he will. Now that he knows he can just be like, oh, I can say everything I can, I'm not scared of anything. I'm deranged and I'm going to fuck shit up and I don't care. Like, that's crazy.
Is it weird that no one's like killed him yet? I know that sounds terrible.
You're not allowed to say indirectly that he's going to die in any sort of horrible fashion.
Oh, no. I wouldn't say that, but I'm like, there's been like death threats on people who like are presidents of like a church group. This guy's president of the United States and like does a shitty job. Like I'm surprised there aren't some maniacs out there.
I don't even know if you can report on possible death threats. Like imagine if there's reporters reporting on that, they'd probably get arrested.
Fake news.
Yeah,
Can you imagine? That would be ridiculous.
I wonder how secluded he actually is. Like how he's probably in so many different wombs and encased in all of these people that he's so protected that he can never get hurt. I heard that he was like, anyone who comes in contact with him gets tested multiple times for the coronavirus.
Really? Is that where all our tests are?
Yeah, probably. It's like half of the tests in the United States are like in Washington, D.C.
Are done in the White House. It would be funny.
I also heard that like the strategic reserve of medical supplies was not given out to states because it's not theirs. Like it's a federal supply for
Well, wait,
people.
isn't it New York Cuomo, who I love now?
Yeah.
Like, cause I don't love, but like I love the back and forth.
Yeah.
He's like each state will give out the testing as they see fit, and they have the ability. Thank you. Have a great day. And then Cuomo's like, we don't have the materials. No one sent us the materials. But I don't know why he's saying we can test. We don't have it. I'm asking the federal government for material and this and that and tests and this. He's like, he hasn't really given it to us. And Trump's like, well, let the states test people. It's like, you gotta.
What's happening there is Trump is inserting himself into a layer where he can make money. And I don't see how people don't see it. It's like he's calling out different drugs, calling out different businesses that are doing well in the economy or like helping out. And then
Can you touch on the one?
The one that's
15 million
fake, yeah, 55 million went to a company with no employees and no prior history of dealing with medical supplies. But their whole contract was based on them distributing medical supplies. So what is happening is that I believe the federal government is acquiring all of these goods they're outbidding the states, putting into federal supply, giving that federal supply to some probably nepotistic company that he's generated to upsell the masks for what I hear is like 8 times what they're worth in order to make money off of it. And this sort of stuff happens, but it shouldn't happen now, and it shouldn't be allowed to continue to happen. So the problem is like you and I are getting screwed in this, and people who don't even realize they're getting screwed in this are getting screwed. And there's no way to change it because of the way our country is now set up. And it's
100%. There's a little bit of capitalism, but
I don't want to say like systemic issues because it's so hard. You can't solve these problems, and people will hark on them. And like, I'm almost turning into that person that comments like, "Well, what about Watergate?" Or like you bring up like some random garbage.
So here's a question for you. Let's say we had someone on the show right now that was a big Trumpy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What could we even say to them?
So what I've been doing is that there's a video of his own quotes downplaying coronavirus stuff.
Yeah, I
This is
remember
how
one person might die or one person is infected.
it's not a
That
big
was
deal.
back in
It's almost
January.
zero.
I understand.
January. This is nothing. One person from China. So like,
Mhm.
it's his own quotes in the video as COVID deaths and infections go up parabolically. And
His speeches change.
yeah,
But he's behind the curve every time. It's kind of funny.
exactly. And
It's very funny.
they I get two responses, like the no response, like I'm not even going to pay attention to that, I'll bring up something else, the misdirect. And then the other
misdirect.
one is like, this is out of context. It's like, you're not even paying attention to the words that he's saying. If you go back, these aren't out of context. And like, I just wasted a minute talking about this, and you probably spent 10 seconds saying like, no, no, not going to do it.
So there's an interesting thing here. Anytime we bring clips or news or articles or information, whether it's scientific, a news article, like I just mentioned, an opinion piece, whatever, all of our information comes secondhand, third hand, fourth hand. So at this time and age in our society, we have to know where we're getting our information from and where they get their information from, and then probably the direct source.
Yeah.
We kind of can't check all of them. So what we have to do is kind of find the best one and maybe use multiple ones to kind of check against each other. Because it'd be like, whoa, this was missing that information. This one did have that information. They both use this source. This one had this source. Yeah. It's like a mind game of checks and balances. That's how I know that I'm getting the most information. And it's from varied sources, but it all funnels to the same area. You know, I have ways of knowing what I'm missing and what I'm not missing. Mm-hmm. These people are into misinformation or no information. I heard that it's all baloney. I heard that it's all bullcrap. I heard that everything you read was garbage fed to you from, like I mentioned before, if someone billionaires paid to have the scientists give fake information.
Ignorant assholes.
But that Occam's razor says the simplest answer is usually the best. The thought that billionaires could keep a secret and keep a collective idea to pay scientists and journalists to collaborate to make one big story where everyone agrees on the big story that's false, and there isn't misinformation or people saying I wanted more money to write this article, or hey, this billionaire asshole gypped me, I'm going to throw him under the bus, here's his name and here's the receipts. None of this happened, and we got all the disinformation, and it all came nice, organized, and most people, scientists, and smart individuals agree is correct. That's all fake news.
Yeah.
To me, that's...
Yeah. I don't know what you just said, but it's probably unimportant.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. It doesn't matter to me.
Just saying, like,
that's exactly what you'd get.
A whole bunch of information came through all these sources, was checked against this, checked against this, checked against this. It ran against this. It could have been failed against this. Was it correct? Was it not? It's probably fake news. Like, it's hard.
The crazy part about that is that the trolls online, like, they will immediately shit on you and then say, not important. So that guy I was arguing with, he called me a dumbass. He called me an idiot.
Nice.
He called me a lot of different things. Even when he was like, just Google my sources, like I got sources. And I actually pulled up his own articles, quoted stuff, and fed it back to him and was like, it doesn't support your what facts you're trying to present. And he goes, oh, my fuck, like, oh, come on now, man. I did like, I'm arguing with you in the straightest
I'm with
way.
You, dude. I'm with you, man. I'm trying to give you your article.
In the end, he didn't.
Come on, man. You twisted my words.
Yeah.
It's your article, dude.
The crazy thing is, if you look at the chain, he's upvoted more than I am. So I wonder, like, who's upvoting the idiot?
What's the and then you got to think of who's what subreddit was it?
Yeah, you have to figure out. Yeah, I forget which one. So you have to watch because the bias is incredibly swayed, which is also leads us back to like those troll campaigns of 4 years ago that they said swayed like the election initially, like the Russian trolls. And that they found, even on Reddit and every social media, that there were troll accounts that would, they'd be around for a while. They'd be posting like kitten pictures and things that are like undeniably cute.
Innocuous.
Yeah. and they would be gaining reputation, so that then whenever a topic came up where they could start flame wars, they would jump in there and insert themselves with their reputation, and people would buy
Retweet
them.
it for their followers. Yeah. And then all their followers saying, "Whoa, I'm with you because I love your kitty pictures."
Yeah.
Upvote, retweet, save.
So we're in a world of anonymity, instantaneous news spreading ridiculousness, and people older than we are completely inept. They're ill-equipped to deal with any of that. And it's a broad-based statement. Some of them are. For the most part, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they're being played easily. Like they weren't in the internet chat rooms of our teenage years where there's obviously someone 50-year-old pervert trying to do whatever he wants to do. And we see through the bullshit of like, this person is not who they say they are. But, you know, other people will buy into that news source or that person, and like they'll be like, yeah, he's matches my ideals, and it has nothing to do with what they're presenting as fact, and it has no objectivity. There was a piece in there that I think you're going to respond to.
It was, but it was also counter. Like, I also think that those same individuals don't give a shit what anyone on the internet says.
That's true too.
Because they're newspaper people. They're bread and butter. They wait till it comes on the TV news. They wait till it shows up in print a day later, which I respect because, you know, that's 24 hours later. They're not listening to the news 15 minutes after it happens. So, after you read does that mean it's correct? Not necessarily.
It's one of the things that's happened is it's become sensationalized. So the news of yesteryear, I feel like it was held to a higher authority. And that authority now
because it was slower,
it was fallen.
100% agree. We didn't give journalism majors enough money when they graduated.
Yeah.
I agree.
Damn it. And it's like I feel like older people definitely hold that to a higher standard when it's force-fed to them and it's generic and it is probably controlled by a very few number of people, billionaires at the top, that have their media empires, and they're just reiterating what they want. And I feel like the internet is the perfect place for research, but no one actually goes that far to research multiple articles, especially not older people who will when
you research, though, it's not easy. It's not like you just click in the sentence and it gives you the answer. You gotta look. I got 5 results. This one's from friggin' Bing. Yeah. No one's going on Bing. This one's Snopes. I'm like, I like Snopes, but like no one's reading the whole thing about green or red or whatever. Yeah. Then I have like one that's like a news website that, you know, is either left or right leaning, and then like one is like some weird website that's like .biz, .gov, .cyy, .kcl/445
source.
Could be, but you don't know. I mean, it's like weird. It could be anything. So researching shit on the internet is like it's a full-time job, and these people who are doing that, they'll take 10 seconds.
Yeah.
If they either find it right away or don't find it, it's over. That's it. They're not going to dig through 9 articles and figure out which one was real and which one was bullshit.
Yeah, it's a battle of doing less effort. And you can't win. There's no way to win. So that's what happened, is that after a week of arguing on Facebook, telling my aunt she was a disgrace, I deleted the app and I said, never again. Goodbye, Facebook.
Wow. Okay.
Let's open up Reddit and argue with those trolls.
Let's argue with some younger people. Maybe. You don't know their age, but let's just assume if they're on Reddit, they're younger.
At least the person who was arguing with me provided sources, which
some
then
sort
I could,
of facts and sources.
Instead of some narrative that was not factual and scientific in any nature whatsoever. So
how would we wrap this episode up, would you say?
I don't know. There are ways to tell whether a source is actually genuine, and we kind of covered there's reputation, there's credibility, reliability.
Following it long enough, you can literally click on studies and stuff, things it mentioned. There are other articles, scientific articles, stuff like that, really boring shit, but you could check it out if you wanted.
Yeah, and you read enough of them and you get smarter about it, and you figure out that like there's pieces missing, or there's this is a good article, like it does cover all the bases and provides all the information that you should have in a scientific article about a global pandemic. And I guess there's another term, astroturfing, that I kind of missed.
What is it?
Astroturfing? Have you heard that before?
No, what's that? I feel like I have, but I don't know.
So astroturfing is the opposite of a grassroots movement. Like a grassroots movement is something that happens naturally, and then people like gain from the bottom up, and they start protesting because it's like a genuinely like the whatever topic it is,
good
genuinely
cause.
moves.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good.
Grassroots is usually like a blue collar worker starting to come up.
Yeah.
I wanted to do this episode because the protests that are happening now about people who want to go back to work, apparently that's astroturfing, because the people are being supposedly paid by somebody else, but also the websites that are originating all of the protest movements, they're all registered in the same state, and they're all registered on the same day. And the most interesting part is Trump is saying, like, liberate these states. Liberate
I remember
Michigan.
that. Yes. Liberate Michigan. Liberate There's another M.
There's
but I forget.
West Virginia, Michigan, and I forget the third one.
Anyway. Yeah, go ahead.
But
Liberate, X all caps, baby.
Somebody linked it to, like, a super PAC and associated it to, like, Betsy DeVos.
Okay.
DeVos, I don't know how to say her name. She's like the education chair.
Head of education. Yeah.
Trump appointed. And it's becoming really weird that those ties to something that's like instilling or instigating violence and stirring up conflict is almost being rooted with the President of the United States.
Interesting. Dropping a tweet. Whoa. Starting a war.
It's insane. So I would be very weary of anything going on, and the perception and the perspective on it, you need to be able to pull back and view it with a very objective eye.
The problem is you're telling me that every piece of news I get, whether it's from the news itself, direct source, the president of the country, protesters tweeting themselves, people looking at protesters and tweeting about them, people that give you the information you just gave, that all these things were based on a state that was all created at the same time, from the same web domain and everything else. Like, that's a source that you got to, you have to vet and think about.
Yeah.
There's so many goddamn things that we have to vet and think about on information that I receive. I take in information every 8 seconds, 20 seconds, 50 seconds. There's going to be things I'll miss. I'll retweet something that's totally wrong once in a while. So what is this? This is the age of the least wrong?
Yeah, how do you even get to the fact check of the random tweet from somebody that supposedly took a picture of something that happened? Even the videos you see. Sometimes you see a video of a snippet of someone fighting someone else, and you say, oh, that person was in the wrong.
And it's 5 years old.
Yeah, it's also 5 years old, not about the coronavirus.
And no one told you.
And was instigated 2 minutes before that, when you didn't see the other person who was like who was the instigator.
Right.
It's almost
you don't know.
It's like watching a hockey fight in the middle of the fight and being like, "Oh, that was such a cheap shot."
Oh my god! Oh, yeah. Jesus Christ! What did you do? Oh, come on, man! You don't know what precipitated these events.
Exactly.
And I think that's what you have to be aware of with
context.
Fake news. Context, precipitation. What happened beforehand? What's going to happen afterwards? The source. Maybe motives the source has. Like, there's a lot of things you got to think of.
Severity of the outcome.
Course, you can't think of all of it at once. I get it. One of my favorite things is to rely on who retweeted or posted the information. Mm-hmm. There are certain people who I find to be intelligent gatekeepers. And I literally rely on them. Hey, maybe a little bit. If I see you post it, I know that you either A, thought about it, or B, reposted it from a source that you thought was a good source.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's right.
I legitimately think about it before I click anything. I'm not just like, oh, I see Trump, click. I was like, oh, I see his opponent, click. I wouldn't even, like, Biden, I'd wait for,
wait for someone else to post it again. Yeah, you're like, let me see what's going on. Anyone else posting this? I have people who I rely on in social media. And I say, oh, did so-and-so like this? And I'm like, they didn't. I wonder why. I'm going to wait on this one. And you don't rush to judgment. You don't rush to agree with it or disagree with it. And I think that's how you have to work with information now. I mean, you got your sources, your gatekeepers, fact checking, who's doing it, source, what their motive might be. I don't know. There's so many friggin' things. It's too much.
We didn't help anybody at all, I don't think.
No, with this episode we did. But follow us, and whatever we post is the truth. And the other thing to think of is, what I want to leave people with is that I usually rely on science. Science gets funded for facts and results, more so than misdirection and weird shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because the scientists actually have a stake in what they're doing. They document it, and it could be wrong. It could be funded by somebody that's
could be,
has ill intentions. But
100%.
at least it can be peer-reviewed and argued, and it's stated
other
in a way
scientists will check it. Yes,
stated in a way that could not be doublespeak.
Yes, exactly. That's why I do like science. So when I hear something from science, by the time it gets to my ears, which I'm not in the scientific community anymore, so I'm not hearing every paper that's released. I'm hearing the papers that have the most upvotes, the most, hey, this one has a good point. Hey, this one's great. This one's perfect piece. Doesn't mean all of those are correct, but it means it's gone through more filters. So there's a higher % chance that this scientific paper or this scientific article I'm seeing is correct. Doesn't mean it is, just means it's a higher % because it's gone through more filters. And I will check it, look at it, see what's going on. Maybe I retweet it, maybe I'll give it a look. But I love science, and that's where I kind of go first.
Do you get outraged by stuff in the media? Not really.
I do, but I used to when I was a journalism major. And I literally say this all the time. I cared more. I thought this was going to be my career. This is going to be where I was going to go. Now I look at it and I'm like, fuck this. Like, I would ever do this in my life now. What we were just talking about, can you imagine if that was my career and I had to make a living off of writing these articles and proving to people, I'm real. I'm writing a good article. I'm not bullshit. I'm not taking money from anyone. Like, no one would care that I'm saying that, even though that's kind of the point of writing or reporting the news.
It's so easy now that whatever voice you have is drowned out by a million other people's voices, and they can do it more convincingly, even though it might not be true.
Yep, 100%. When my very first journalism class, the teacher went over for a full hour how important it was to get the spelling of the name of the person you're quoting. He was like, don't spell their name wrong. Check 3 times. Once in the beginning, have them spell it and all this shit. And he was going on and on. And I was like, who cares? It's someone's fucking name. And all he cared about was getting their name correct. If you had an address, get the address correct. Check it. Ask the person. Ask the police. Get the address 100% correct. Get their name spelling right. It might sound like Lieber, but if it's spelled Ilieber, get it correct. If you have 2 different spellings, call them back before you publish the article and make sure the spelling for the name is correct. You need that spelling correct. And it was the craziest thing to me. We spent 2 weeks talking about getting the correct data on stupid shit like Mary Jane Lieber, 36 of Oxford Circle. Like, I had to get that correct, or else the whole thing was bananas. He didn't care. And looking back now, I'm like, no one cares about the name, the spelling, the age, anything. It could even be a false quote. And I'm like, it's just getting published. It's like, we're going with it. I'm sorry. We'll fix it later, man. You can do a TikTok and pronounce your name correct. But it's weird to me that was 2000. And
you paid for that education.
4?
Yeah.
Well, think about it. I should have. That's the way it should have been done.
Oh,
it just,
true. Yeah.
I mean,
what happened?
It's what happened to it? Absolutely nothing. It's out the window. We're gone.
What happened to the way the journalistic integrity? I think is what you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's completely destroyed.
No one cares, and no one cares. Does anyone care? Do you guys care if they spelled someone's name wrong or they put her age wrong? It was supposed to be 32 instead of 36. You used to be able to sue for libel. It was like a big thing. Now it's like everything's libel. It's all gone. It's all crazy. So what should we leave this with? The news is all crazy, all fake, all bullshit, all nuts?
I don't know.
one side is correct, the other side is totally wrong.
Find your reliable and credible sources and fact check them. And then once you believe they're true and honest, I'd probably stick with them. And maybe check them every now and then, because you probably don't have time for that.
Right, you don't have time. You're turning me into a journalist when I'm just following someone. It's like, have you checked their sources recently? Have they gotten any big paychecks from a big company?
Yeah. There's so much
It's
misdirection.
weird.
Yeah, it's very strange.
And there's no way for me to know that 100% of what I imbibe, feed on, what I read every day, who I follow and who I believe. Like, when do they turn and become bullshit? When are they wrong? When will I catch it? I don't know.
Will it matter? I feel like it doesn't matter at all after a day. Unless 2,000 people a day die. Oh, maybe it needs to be 20,000. I don't know. I don't think they will care.
Wild.
Who cares? It was just a small thing. It only lasted a few months where no one went outside and didn't talk to anybody and didn't touch anybody else. Strange.
It's weird.
World War II, 1. Was there 3? I don't even remember. That's probably what's going to happen. And it's going to piss people off who care a lot. So care a little bit less, but put more effort in? That makes no sense at all.
I don't know.
But that's what you got to do.
Don't go on Facebook.
Yeah. Get off of Facebook. You're done.
Sum it all up. Everything you read is bullshit. Everything you read is true. All the facts you think are wrong and all the things the conspiracy theorists are saying might be true, but probably aren't. And if you have to do any journalistic work yourself, check the sources, spell the names right, make sure the address, double check the spelling of the name, and maybe send us a tweet about it. And it'll get 2 likes.
And you're going to track down that knowledge?
Yeah.
Make sure you grow a mustache first. Make sure you're entirely ready to gumshoe it.
Be a sleuth, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Check our socials. Click this, click that. Check everything else we do. All I'm saying, folks, is A, be safe out there. Don't sneeze on anyone. Don't kiss anyone weird. And B, we do like you. Do you like them?
A lot.
We like you a lot, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Check out our other stuff. Don't die.
Stay alive. Peace.